Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another eMarketer Tech Talk, where we host amazing guests from all areas of media, ad tech, and MarTech. I'm Henry Powderly, SVP of Media Content and Strategy at eMarketer. Today, we'll explore case studies and learn tactics from CPG and in-store specialists on how to build shelf-ready brands, boost retail presence, and drive loyalty. I'm joined now by my special guests, Ani Fonte, Head of Business and Brand Leadership at Periscope, a quad company, and John Pawlowski, Vice President of Marketing at Heckova. Ani and John have a great presentation for you, and afterwards we'll open it up for questions about what you've learned. So please use the chat window to submit those questions for the Q&A. Now, Ani, over to you.
Amazing. Thank you. So we're super excited to be here today. Today's agenda is going to be pretty fun. First, I'm going to do a little bit of about us, what Quad all about. We'll do a little grounding on today's consumers. So like, how the heck did you get started in doing this new product launch sort of situation? And then instead of sort of walking you through, like, these are the steps that you need to take, we thought we'd take you through a real life example. Heckova is right in the throes of breaking into retail, and it's a great opportunity to really learn all the things that happen all the way up to getting into retail, as well as what are the things that need to happen to break into retail and become a success story. So with that, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Quad. So we're Quad, full service integrated agency. We're built on a printing foundation that touches over 50% of what you get at home. We're built to build brands. From a creative perspective, we can deliver strategy, creative insights. This is powered by Periscope as well as Favorite Child, powerful work that flexes across different touch points. We have the printing power from packaging to direct mail, design, create, test, and deploy. In store, we can take work and transform it into displays with stopping power. We can kit deploy wherever and whenever you need it, in addition to testing to make sure that it's right before it goes out the door. And then media and metrics, unmatched media fueled by Rise anchored on performance DNA, and metrics to ensure that a campaign is always living, evolving, because a great campaign doesn't just go up, it actually goes up and it evolves and changes based on all your learnings. I am honored to be part of a company that touches over 2,700 plus brands. We work with them on a variety of different ways, whether it's helping them with their private label branding, building their brand equity, like we do with John and Heckova, and so much more, experiential engagement, packaging, design, strategy. It's a way for us to ensure that we have a diverse portfolio that helps us understand exactly what's important to retailers, what's important to brands, and gives us a nice holistic perspective of how do we measure up and how do we resonate with our buyers at retail. So if you indulge me for a little bit, there's a couple of data points within this space that I thought was really important or really interesting. Today's consumers are built different. We hear inflation is rising, but spending is up, right? So 42% are saying that they are willing to spend on something that they kind of like, even though they feel the things are really expensive. And 3 in 4 consumers said that they're opening to making a splurge. So if you're looking at launching a new product, there's appetite out there. You just need to be compelling, and you need to make sure that it's making an impact to really resonate and grow. There's less brand loyalty than ever before. However, they expect you to be in a multi-channel experience. So kind of persnickety in terms of like whether or not I'm going to buy you more than once. So you need to make sure you build a brand that has really good insight to ensure that you can create that ongoing loyalty. And you need to make sure that it's actually can survive in a multi-channel experience. It's no longer a one channel and done. They want to see this brand and create some trust with the brand and want to see you in a variety of different places to really succeed. This is a great one. The market is more saturated than ever. Over 30,000 brands are launched every year or try to launch every year, and 95% of those brands actually fail. That is a whole lot of people that are going up there, coming up with amazing business cases, coming up to your buyers and giving them these stories. So you can't just walk in with a great story about a brand that you think you have a lot of passion for. That's one portion of the equation. The other portion of this is making sure you have what it takes to really take it to the next level and be one of the ones that break through. So if I took a look at this and say, what are like the 4 big quadrants then as we walk into this story? Number 1, brand differentiators are critical for standing out. It's a hugely saturated market. Let's make sure we create brands that stand for something, that have a story to tell, that is engaging and going to fuel that loyalty. You need to make sure you do a lot of testing, pre-market testing, ongoing testing. All of this builds your case study. It builds the confidence for people to take a risk on you. but also helps you ensure that you're not driving a one-time deal, but you're actually creating a brand that's gonna have repeat purchase power and fuel loyalty. You need to step up your marketing experience game. It's not about one channel. It's how do you make sure that you can survive in a multi-channel experience. It goes beyond just real life, and it goes beyond online. You need to be able to surround consumers so they can trust you with the money that they have to spend and try new pieces. So I am thrilled to be doing this today with John. It's been an amazing ride. And instead of sort of walking you through slide by slide, these are the steps you need to take. Like I said, we wanted to take you through the experience of this ride that we've been on. John, you knew how hard this was going to be. What the heck were you thinking? How'd you get into this?
Yeah, I'm glad I didn't see your slide about the 95% failure rate. That it made me think a couple of times. Thank you for having me, Ani. Yeah, quick background. I've been CPG, brand management, human food for most of my decade, and I had a colleague of mine call me up and said, "You got to check out Pet's growing. It's recession proof, not entirely true, but it's pretty good. It's pretty darn close." And said, "Hey, we're getting in this freeze dry raw space. You got to check it out." I did. The trends were great. The industry was great, and so I've been doing this, just trying to launch this new brand for the last 2 years here.
And so how did you land on Heckova? I love the story. So this is a total layup for you, but it was a bold move.
So this is the best slide in the deck. This is my dog Bandit. I gotta be careful how loud I say that. He'll come running. This is my pup. He's my English Springer Spaniel. And so the first time I took him to the dog park, I did not know what was going to happen when I let him off his leash, right? And there were like 12 other dogs. I let him off because he's this fast hunting dog. He just took off sprinting, and all 12 other dogs looked up and just started chasing him. And they just started chasing him zoomies back and forth across the dog park for 4 or 5 minutes. This other pet parent saunters over to me and says, "Hey, is that your dog?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "You have a heck of a fast dog." And I got super proud at that moment for some inexplicable reason. I had nothing to do with his speed genetics. But I said, "Yeah, well, thanks." And trying to make conversation. Like, "Well, what's your dog? What's the heck of a thing your dog does?" And for the next 15 minutes, he told me way too much about his dog, to the point I was like, I gotta get the heck out of here. But thank you for sharing. So, but somewhere built in there was this insight that we all have this heck of a cool thing that our pet is known for, but maybe we're the only ones who really know that. And this feels like a brand that maybe while we don't know all those things, we know that relationship exists and can celebrate that. So that was the insight that we took to Periscope, as you know, Ani, Quad, and started to say, like, how do we build a brand? How do we do some research? And so with Periscope, did some research, landed on kind of our brand mantra. And so if you'll advance to the next one here, Ani, that's probably a better way to talk this through. And we got packaging, we got our brand architecture, but as we looked in the category space, we saw that there were really 3 big kind of pillars of what brands stand for. And again, as always, I'm oversimplifying, so I apologize. But we saw in general there was like kind of those who treated you like clinical patients, like here's the health benefits and ingredients. There were those who kind of treated like your dog was a wolf, and it was like kind of an ancestral heritage play. And then those that treated like this is your child, your literal kid. And so we're like, well, knowing that that's what the landscape looks like, how do we play? How do we show up in a way that's differentiated? We're about 150 years too late to be like the first mover advantage here. So what could that look like? And Heckova was just a really neat feel that we felt that we could embrace.
Yeah, I mean, from the get-go, the data was just resonating. People really engaged with the name. We'll talk a little bit about some people did, some people didn't, but for the most part, people did. They made choices. And so you started to create the story. And one of the things that I know we engage in is how do we bring the story to life from the beginning to make sure that people galvanize behind what the brand is, what it isn't, what's the energy, and see how other people feel about it when they start sort of seeing the brand come to life. So here's a little something that we built to begin to sort of showcase what that could be.
Every dog is a heck of a dog. The smiles, aw. The smells, the zoomies, and kaboomies. Did we mention beauty and style? Okay. Your dog may be your protector, your nanny, your personal trainer, your best bud. So cute. Whatever makes your dog a heck of a dog, they show you a heck of a lot of love every day. And now there's a heck of a way to show it in return. Can you give a high five? Say hello to Heckova. Freeze-dried raw meals and treats for dogs. Full of a heck of a lot of raw goodness, including real protein-packed meats and nutrient-rich fruits, veggies, and whole grains. It's a heck of a way to love your heck of a dog. Heckova.
So let's see. So far, we have Bandit in the park. We leveraged data to validate and build a strategy. We made sure that we tested spaces with consumers to ensure like what we were doing was resonating with them. And we built a brand story. What next? Now that you have a story, what was the next thing that you did?
Well, we know that first moment of truth is that moment on shelf or on e-com or whatever the case may be. So packaging had to play a pretty critical early role. So, of course, teaming up with Quad and Periscope, trying to find out what that brand architecture would look like. So, we started to get to this visual asset creation. I think everyone's seen some derivation of this next slide, of like, here are the colors, here's the Pantones, right? But even the stickers, and here's how the brand kind of shows up and has that vibe throughout all the touch points. But eventually, at the end of the day, this is a product, so we had to build a family of products. So it came together in a portfolio, sharing that brand architecture. What would the communication strategy look like? All the way down to the t-shirts that would actually be wearable. I do have that t-shirt. I was going to wear it today, but I actually do wear it, and I washed it and it shrunk, and so that wasn't the best look for this, I don't think. So, but wearable, cool swag, that type of stuff. So all that came together and got the foundation of the brand.
Yeah, I love this idea because one of the things that oftentimes goes by the wayside is these like little artifacts, like the t-shirts and the stickers. And when you start getting that energy and people start asking you for like, where'd you get that shirt or where'd you get that? You have something interesting in the brand. And that's something that we feel too from an agency perspective. I think when you feel like your partner is sort of getting that energy of, can we have some of those? Can you print some extra stickers? Can we toss them out to our company? That just shows you we're onto something that's super interesting and special. So park, brand strategy, story, consumer got validated. We have product packaging. There's all sorts of excitement happening. Well, now you got to sell this thing. So what'd you do first?
First was website, e-com kind of 101, just kind of build some credibility and some way to fulfill orders, right? I'd invite you, if you've got your phone handy, that animation there, that is, your screen is not tricking you. That's what happens. And, I worked with Periscope to say, this has got to match the brand. So it's got to be a homepage unlike any other. So go to heckova.com, note the goofy spelling, and you can play with, that dog's name is Maisie. You can play with Maisie and feed her as much as you want. And I knew we were onto something there when my teenage kids just started playing with this, like on their own, unbidded. And I was like, okay, that's fun. That's cool. And of course, the rest of the website starts to look like a normal website. And but we tried to start fulfilling orders and at the end of the day start to learn more about our consumers. What are they buying? How much are they buying? Where do they come from? And but we always knew that, again, maybe part of it's my CPG background. E-com was never going to be enough, at least for us to scale as quickly as what we had energy to do. And so we knew that we had to get on shelf at retail sooner rather than later.
Hey, John, you learned a bunch of stuff, though, from a DTC launch, right? So there was a couple of things that you learned within there that sort of helped you sort of figure out like where you were going to go next. Can you share a little bit about even with the soft launch on a website, what data you got and how it helped sort of fuel your next step?
Yeah, I mean, and while we were doing this concurrently, we were, working together with agency partners to say like, well, let's do some consumer learnings, let's do focus groups, let's find things out. I mean, we did learn that the older demographic, they were kind of like, what is this? And kind of give me my kibble, give me the stuff that I understand. But we realized the younger demographic, and those had kind of a psychographic profile to be a little bit more, I'll call it hip and cool and different and what's next. They were really embracing this in a hurry. And so we were like, all right, how do we start to find retail partners that can help us, navigate to that target audience? But at the same time, we knew that we didn't want to be too stuffy with the brand and just, this is the premium, the race to the top. Everyone wants to do premium. But how do we kind of democratize what was already a pretty premium product? And so, how do we find that retail partner that marries all that together at one point?
Yeah, and that was super critical in your next choice. That's why I think that question is super interesting. Like, learn in each step. And then what are the things that you learned from it to sort of influence what you're doing next? And so, because your next step was a big one as well.
Yeah, so you gave it away there. I mean, I think about, I go back to, coming out of school, and most of us on this call, I mean, we look for a job at some point. And I go back to that experience for me, and I had a lot of classmates that were just looking for any job, just throwing the resume out, a shotgun approach, and someone's got to hire me eventually. Versus the approach to like get laser specific, and I've got like 1 or 2 dream companies I want to work for. And I want, because really with that first company that lands on your resume, it doesn't have to be the case, but a lot of times it kind of sets the path for your industry experience, or at least where you go next. And so I feel the same thing to a brand. Kind of where you show up first says a lot to the world, to the community of like, this is what this brand is set out to do. So through past contacts and just kind of understanding the people and the process at Costco, we knew that was going to be a real home run swing. So we knew it was asking a lot. But we're like, hey, if in a limited SKU environment, and really this is true for any club, right? That's impressive if you can get in and actually sell some products. So through a great contact, we met a really, really great buyer down in the Texas region and earned a rotation, which we did last year was our first rotation. And the next slide will show kind of how this packaging all came together. And I remember the first time I saw this package on a pallet, and these pallets on like rafters in a warehouse, I was like, that is a heck of a lot of product. And you have this elation feeling and this like gut sinking feeling. It was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to sell that much, because so long on e-com, I mean, 10% of my sales have been to my mom, right? So how do I know that this is gonna go? So there's definitely a moment of truth involved in this. But we were able to sell. We were able to sell through all the products. Had some decent numbers, and we're looking at another Costco rotation in LA later on this summer.
And I know that there was a special note on packaging. You called earlier. It's that moment of truth. There was a lot of focus on making sure the package stood for itself, not literally stood for itself, but actually stood for itself. It was very easy to read. You knew exactly what you were getting. You knew the brand name. It was engaging to spot within the Costco aisles from afar. So I know that was one of the key things that you enjoyed, the stopping power of seeing an awesome palette, which is always joyful. It's just the power of the packaging to be able to kind of bring that to life. And so, but there was a lot of things that you also learned from this Costco venture before you sort of took off to your next adventure. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Sure. I mean, we always had an ear out to consumer feedback. Certainly seen as the rotation ended at Costco, and we had a whole new community that said like, "Hey, I like this product. Where do I find it?" And now they're showing up at e-com and they're giving you feedback. We did hear from a number of people saying like, "Man, your brand, this feels like a very Target brand." And so kind of unbidden, we're like, "Well, that's interesting," because when we think of crossover and just kind of guests or members or retail shoppers at Costco and where else do they look? We're like, you know what? We know that there's a crossover at Target too. And when we get back to our democratization of this really premium product, where could we go next that has that aura, that benefit, that halo to the brand that we could also help too, and it'd be a reciprocal relationship. So Target was the next laser focus that we went after. We said we really want this to work. And I mean, we got serious enough that one of our key hires right out of the gate was an ex-buyer from Target, a friend of mine named Chad, and saying like, look, how do we do this? How do we break into this very specific retailer where we want a partnership that would really matter? And so, together we collaborated. We were able to meet with a great buyer who gave us some good time, good energy, good feedback. and ultimately got to a point where we just launched on Target.com nationally just in about 6-7 weeks ago. But again, it's learning about the process. And Target's a big box, very important retailer and they got there very carefully over decades. And so as a brand, you gotta know what you're doing. And so we read their 80-page PDF, whatever it was, and said, we got to take this seriously. This is gospel, and we got to learn it and do it right. So all the way from building our PDPs, our product display pages you see here, to how do we show up in digital media marketing. We made it very custom to that retailer experience so that consumers would see it being a symbiotic relationship. And so here are just some examples, I think, as we flip through that we've been running. Again, this is all pretty new because we're not even 2 months out of the gate here. But if you were to go to Target.com, and by the way, buy a couple, that'd be great. I'd appreciate it. Then you're going to see this kind of immersive experience that is the same across what we now have 7-8 SKUs up online there.
John, I want to take a pause on this because it sounds so far like the dream state, right? So we went to Costco, then we went to Target. Life is going great, but you made some big choices on places that might seem obvious that you didn't go. Can you talk a little bit about those and how your organization, like how's that story been floating in your organization as you sort of get people to buy your story for this process?
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite quotes, strategy-related quotes, is from Michael Porter of the Porter's 5 Forces ilk. But the quote is something along the lines of, the essence of strategy is about what you don't do, which I think is super interesting because especially when you're trying to launch a brand, there's such a desire to just sell to anybody, anywhere who's willing to take it. And that's not necessarily a bad move because a lot of us have, we got to make sales. But because we have this very methodical approach, we said, look, if we were just be able to pick out of the air, partners that would really appreciate what we're bringing and that we could appreciate them back. This is how we would start. This is how we would build our resume. This is how we build our next steps.
That's amazing. Throughout this process, we talked a little bit about like things that surprised you. What surprised you most? Or what was one of the big things that surprised you?
Well, one was picking this brand name, honestly, because this was not my first choice. I mean, I was, going back and forth the agency. I was like, this is a goofy name. This might not work, okay? And but if I had like kind of a aha moment, it was embracing it and realizing there's differentiation here. That's ultimately why we chose this direction. And even to some of the social media that you see in there now, the first time the agency shared this with me, in fact, the next slide's even better, Ani, as far as where my eyebrows shot up. Like I saw some of this stuff, I was like, that is weird. I don't know if I want to put that out there, right? But then I realized, I asked myself, like, well, what would I put out there myself? And I was like, well, it'd probably, and not to disparage anyone else who does this, because it's a very safe angle, but I would put a picture of a dog eating food out of a bowl and then say something about the food in the copy. That's what I would do. But to have some of these, kind of lean into the brand and differentiating. And I will tell you, as I've now sat across from several different national retail buyers, showing them this type of marketing, they're all getting it. They're saying like, yeah, this is different than what we're seeing. You have, one of my sayings, I don't know if it's really a quote, but like when you're trying to be everything to everybody, you're kind of nothing to nobody. And I know that's bad grammar, but that's kind of how I feel. And so for us to be, this angled, it helps us understand who retail partners are that are going to be successful and where we can market and communicate that will be successful as well.
Cool. I love this story. So as we're kind of figuring out, like going into today's conversation, I love the messiness of it, right? Because I think sometimes or you'll see a presentation, it'll say like, these are the 5 things you need to do to win and sort of like go off and get it raw. And so it is a little messy. It's not exactly perfect. It's not a strict guidelines, but I did write down a bunch of things that I think tenets throughout the story that I think we agree are the things that you need to think about. So number 1, dog park, very important. Number 2, leverage data, right? You need to be able to quantify the opportunity, understand what exactly it is that you're getting into. And John did an amazing job of just looking at the marketplace and everything before he actually made the jump. Build a strategy. You need to have a story. You need to crystallize that opportunity, test it with a bunch of folks, show it to people, shop it around to make sure it feels right. Test spaces, and be open to the process. Some of the stuff that you think you're absolutely sure is going to be right, sometimes it isn't, whether it's the work or it's actually the name of the brand or so much more. You need to build a brand story and shop that around. Make sure that when you build something, it actually inspires folks. That's actually going to make them want to pull out their wallet or their phone, and be able to engage with your business. Packaging is critical. Net, that's your moment of truth. You need to make sure that it resonates. You need to make sure that it breaks through. You need to build a brand engagement plan, where every touch point counts. Like even swag, like having something that people want to stop and sort of engage with you on is super important. D2C is an amazing way to get some additional initial learnings or be your learnings. Gives you a lot of data, gives you a lot of insights. Pull that data, crunch those numbers, and make sure you have like that information. Network, learn, ask. It's all out there. That's the best way to get to break into retailers, is learn more, learn how others have done it, and be a part of the process. Buyers are thrown to a lot of information on a daily basis. Like you need to make sure that the stories that we're bringing to them matter, that break through, and it matters to them as well. Be choiceful, learn from each other, allow yourself to be uncomfortable, choose a partner that gets you. And, Ted Lasso isn't wrong. It's all about believing ultimately, because you're going to get a lot of left-hand turns. So you want to make sure that you're true to it. So Henry, I'm going to toss it back to you to see if there's any questions out there for us.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ani and John. What a great presentation. It was not only interesting to me as a marketer, but also as a pet parent. But these were really great insights. I do love that final point about telling stories that really matter. I think that's really imperative. So we do have quite a few questions. So why don't I jump right into the Q&A?
Oh, nice.
Okay. John, this first one is for you. What are the 3 you got to do this realizations that it's time to break into retail?
3, that's very specific. Okay, well, luckily I'm a marketer and I can think of 3 things pretty easily there. I mean, if I'm back to kind of the presentation and how we structure this journey, because I'm a marketer, I like to alliterate. I'd say people, process, and passion. People, because I think we've all been on the other side of the email where it's like, hi, I'm trying to introduce myself. I mean, that's a really tough way to get to know somebody. So the people connection to kind of introduce you as a warm handoff. I mean, that was, frankly, that was a very critical foundational piece of how we got into retail, and the specific retailers that we got into was that power of people. Second is process. Like I said, these retailers have processes. They have them for a reason, because that's what they've seen works. And so you have to learn what those processes are, and then show up in a way that indicates to the buyers that you've read and understand and are willing to follow through what those processes are. And then finally, passion. I hope at some point during this, you've seen my personal passion for the brand and what it is and what it could become. And that does, that does get exuded through these meetings, through the touch points with consumers, when people say like, yeah, there's a je ne sais quoi here that I want to be a part of and get in on. So I guess that's what I'd say is people, process, and passion.
Excellent. Maybe piggybacking off of that, because we did have a comment congratulating you on Heckova and really enjoying the story. I think what they would like to know, is there anything you would have done differently, or what is the greatest learning? And maybe that kind of dovetails with what you just said, but greatest learning, or what would you have done differently?
Yeah, I think it's to know where my failures haven't caught up to me yet. So I think I'll be seeing them right. Certainly, when you're 2 years in, you want to go faster, right? And have I missed opportunities to go faster, to spike sales faster, to get more, in-market support faster? Probably, and so I think along the way somewhere, I made a methodical choice versus a speed choice. And that has ramifications over how quickly your P&L is showing black numbers instead of red numbers. And so, I say I did sidestep a lot of the kind of quicker, faster, independent retailers as an example, where a lot of people do start and say like, well, let me just kind of break into the market and see how this goes. So certainly I think there would have been an opportunity to concurrently or parallel path do some of that. But at the same time, I also know you can only go on that first date once. And so I wanted that to be meaningful when we approach some of these bigger partners as well. So yeah, let's redo this in a year and I'll do a better job answering it.
That was pretty good. Thanks so much. Ani, this one's for you. How
Oh.
did you know you had the right mix of online and in-store presence?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, you never have enough, right? So it's all about mindful choices and data. And what we've done is we're very constrained. We really wanted to understand like who the consumer was, where were they, solid connections plan to make sure we understood those insights, what the brand was trying to do, and then figure out a way to sort of bring it to life in the right ways. Measure, test, and result. We want each step, particularly as we're launching the brand, like we want each step to be successful. Having some negative failures from the beginning is kind of tough to sort of recoup from when you're trying to gain that momentum. So yeah, made sure that we had the right balance of spend, made sure that we had the right balance of pushing. But yeah, we're both very excited at the opportunity to have more and more in retail experiences. So stay tuned for more.
Excellent. John, how about you take this one? Which retail spaces do you have your eye on next?
Yeah, so that's gets into some good strategy stuff. So I can't say too much about that yet, but I would just say based on where we've been and wanting to get to Gen Pop, we don't want this to be just the exclusive pet parents. We want all pet parents to enjoy this freeze dry raw, which is why this kind of Costco target strategy made a lot of sense for us. But certainly there would be brand credibility to be gained, going into some of the more pet specialty space. So clearly that's something that we are highly interested in. So more to come as we understand where we can have those conversations next.
Excellent. This next question is really interesting, and I think some of it might be directed to you, John, but Ani, it would be great to hear your perspective on it as well. The question is, can you talk about channel strategy? Where does digital media fall in a space where shopping is mostly in person? And as an add-on, are you using influencers?
Yeah, so the latest, whether it's Mintel or Nielsen, I grew up as a data junkie early in my CPG career. So a lot of it would show that it's a 70-30 split right now, at least in the pet space, 70 being in real life in store, and then 30% being e-com. 30% is actually a lot bigger than was in human food. At least when I was in frozen food, it was like single digit stuff. So this is, e-com is powerful. Certainly digital media, I love just as a kind of startup brand because you have so much more efficient spend on digital. And so we have put the entirety of our spend in digital spend so far. Now, digital goes pretty broad. So the answer to the second question, yes, influencers we feel are really important. We're starting with those influencers that are just heck of a cool pet parents that have like a really unique story to tell with their Instagram, Facebook. We haven't gotten to TikTok yet, but what could that all look like? So that's the direction we're going. In fact, even as we're prepping for a Costco LA launch, we're trying to look for some of those heck of a stories kind of geo-fenced to the LA region, so that we can hopefully connect with some of those pet parents who realize they also have a heck of a story and see that resonating with them.
Yeah, we'll take volunteers if there's any heck of a pet parents out there that wanna partner with us. I would add to this as restraint. I think particularly when you're launching something, there's an excitement of wanting to go everywhere all at once, a heck of a lot of it everywhere all the time. And we've been really, really mindful. What are the right places to be in? Where do we have to go to engage these people? How do we find them? And how do we use that data to learn? And this is where digital has been a really great help for us to make sure that we are focused on an ROI from a media investment. We want to make sure that we're crafting stories that can be more powerful every time we walk into a new retailer.
Excellent. Here's a fairly specific question perhaps we can help with. The attendee asks, how can you leverage the conversation with a CPG who wants to target an audience that doesn't align with our customer data?
Gosh, you want that from a CPG? I can answer it from an agency perspective, or we can answer it from a brand perspective. I'll buy John a little bit of time because I'm sure, right, this happens. I think when you have a misalignment of who your consumer is against the product, data to me is the big one, and data and testing. And we did on this business a whole lot of that on the front end, because you have to learn and you need to be able to craft that story in a way that feels linear. So knowing who you're going after, knowing what matters to them, and knowing where those people shop as a way to begin to create your base, and create a compelling story. This is truly all about storytelling. Launching a new brand is a super beautiful, complex story. And if you have a storyline that doesn't match, it very quickly falls apart. And that's where you see that first slide of so many brands that don't make it, because they collapse because the story does not hold true. So we do data, strategy, speak to consumers. If there's a mismatch on the front end, we tend to have a conversation and sort of show the data before we sort of push forward.
Yeah, I'll jump in. It took me a second, but I get the question fully now. I would say when you're going to a retailer, if you're going to a big retailer, there are data out there about that retailer and who shops there. That, I mean, it might not be the first level of Google, but one level down into some of these package facts or whatever kind of syndicated offerings. If not, there's still channel data out there to say these are the types of consumers who go to these channels, that type of thing. And then to marry that with your brand, your CPG products. And now if you've done your own consumer testing, you can see where those overlaps exist between the channel or the retailer and what your brand is. If you haven't done the research on your brand, I mean, pick a lane and stick with it. Because back to the being everything to everybody, that's not a good strategy. At least when you're talking to someone for the first time of who are you and how do you show up? Because no one wants to hear like, well, we're just, even toilet paper's got some lanes that they stick in, right? So as something as ubiquitous as that, if you've got to find something that connects. And even in our case, even when we're talking to retailers or those who, frankly, they over-index with the older demographic, something that we know we don't fit. Turns out even in those instances, they are targeting the younger demographic. They're targeting that up and coming, and they're trying to get those wallets. So there's almost always a story to be crafted there of how you are trying to help that buyer, achieve the next step. And that data and research, and then really picking a lane and strategy, that's where you can find that story to get you a seat at the table.
Excellent. All right, we have time for one more question. John, maybe you take this one. If you had one piece of advice for brands wanting to expand into big retailers like Target or Costco, what would it be?
I go back to my job analogy. I mean, think about what you did to get whatever job you're sitting in right now. And probably somewhere in that experience was lots of informational interviews. It was a lot of networking. It was a lot of behind the scenes research you did on that company or what your job title could be or whatever else. And so you probably spent hours and hours trying to figure out how to get exactly where you are right now. And that's exactly what I did and our team did in these instances, was to be laser focused on the one that we really want to get into. And, back to, looking in the rearview mirror, we may have passed up some other opportunities on the way, being that laser focused, but it did result in, net positive of getting to where we wanted to go. So I guess the overarching thesis statement here is find that perfect dream company, that dream job, and then go all out for it. And sometimes we get no, and it's okay to get a no. You move on to your next dream company or whatever that is. And if it sounds a little tedious and methodical, I'd say it is. And this strategy may not be the best for everyone, but that's what got us to where we are right now.
Awesome answer. Ani, John, thank you so much. This has been a great presentation. Thank you for answering all of the questions from our audience. We really appreciate it.
Amazing. And thanks to John. He's been an amazing partner. It's a privilege to be on the stage with him.
All right, before we wrap up, I want to tell everybody to mark your calendar for next Friday, May 3rd, for eMarketer's half-day virtual eMarketer Summit. We'll have exclusive analyst-led sessions on thriving post-cookie, mastering retail media networks, leveraging AI in marketing, and more. Registration is open on our events page at emarketer.com/events. And while you're on that page, you can also register for any analyst or tech talk webinar you see there. Once again, thank you for all of your time. Thanks to Ani and John, to the team at Quad, and our eMarketer Studio team behind the scenes for making this webinar possible. We'll see you all on the next Tech Talk.